I've dabbled in quite a few TV shows, and when I say dabbled, I mean given up after 2.5 episodes, which is when the plot seems to plateau, and I realize I don't have enough investment in the characters to actually give a shit about what becomes of them. I guess it's because after the pilot episode has provided most of the characterization, exposition, and atmosphere I need to get the gist of all 22 episodes, there's just no point in spending that much time watching what could be communicated in a 2 hour long movie. I've made a habit out of skipping to the finale after my 2.5 episode taste test to find out what happens. Aside from my embarrassing affiliation with reality TV, I have actually only managed to complete two TV series to date. The first is Hannibal, which ran from 2013 to 2015 with 3 seasons total, 39 episodes, developed by some guy called Brian Fuller. The second is Dr. Foster, written by Mike Bartlett, aired between 2015 and 2017, 2 seasons, only 10 episodes. They're both, perhaps by coincidence, these made for TV series. Dr. Foster is a BBC One drama television series, and Hannibal is developed for the NBC network. They're not particularly popular, although I know Hannibal has gained more momentum quite recently, actually. So, lately I've had to ask myself, what is it about these TV shows that make them better in my eyes than basically any other TV show I've seen? What are the similarities between the two? Are there any recurring patterns that say something about me and my tastes in entertainment? So, at first glance, just based purely on the brief synopses provided by Netflix, the TV shows seem like they're worlds apart. Hannibal is classified primarily as horror, while Dr. Foster is probably just seen as a dowdy, middle aged divorcee watching with a wine glass in hand type of domestic drama. The bottom line is, I think the stories of both TV shows share the same duality between empathy and apathy or straight up psychopathy. Both writers decided to cast the antagonistic title character as the narrator. In other words, they're told from the villain's perspective. Not only does that setup immediately force audience members to question where their own empathy lies and who they're supporting, but it also tests the true extent of their own moral compass. Obviously, Hannibal and Dr. Foster differ in the extremity of their moral corruption. Hannibal is a cold-blooded, cannibalistic psychopath. They describe him as being narcissistic to the point where he believes the people he murders and eats are little more than pigs. Just to clarify, there's no veneration involved. He doesn't eat them to become one with them, nor is there any sexual Ted Bundy-related motivation driving what he does. Gemma Foster, the titular character in Dr. Foster, on the other hand, is depicted as a decidedly normal 21st century career woman turned psycho, in a different sense of the word than in Hannibal's, because of external factors. So that's already an underlying difference between Hannibal Lecter and Gemma Foster. He commits cruel acts out of nature, while her revengeful actions are spurred out of what is arguably nurture, since they are a reaction to her surroundings. Namely, the shocking realization she faces that her husband of 15 years has spent the last 2 of those years having an affair with a 23-year-old woman, who is the daughter of their family friends. Or girl rather than woman, as Gemma puts it. This seemingly cliché premise of the show takes a surprisingly unique turn when the grieving, helpless, abandoned wife comes across a poem called The Mourning Bride online. The lines in the poem, "Heaven has no rage like love and hatred turned, nor hell hath a fury like a woman scorned," in the poem inspire Gemma Foster to teach her unfaithful husband a lesson. She may not resort to cannibalism or serial killing the way Hannibal does, but instead she torments her victim in various ways that are potentially unethical. For instance, she starts her complicated scheme to undermine her husband by outing his affair with their family friends to your 23-year-old daughter at a dinner party with all of them present, destroying familial bonds and putting her husband's financial stability at risk, since the father of the girl he's been sleeping with is also his business partner, and let's just say he doesn't take the news very well. She goes as far as to violate doctor-patient confidentiality when Gemma discloses the daughter's pregnancy in front of her parents, and also the fact that the daughter was contemplating termination of the pregnancy. Later on, Gemma fakes the death of their 12-year-old son in order to get back at her husband by making him feel the shock and horror she felt after discovering a blonde hair on his scarf. The end of the second series has definitely crossed the line into morally debatable territory, because after she's managed to turn everyone, including his new wife, against her ex-husband, leaving him broke, homeless, and desperate, she offers to help him commit suicide. We're left asking ourselves if Simon, her husband, truly deserved that much payback. Dr. Foster, once a loving mother and supportive wife, becomes unrecognizable by the end of the show. And yet, despite the character's mental transformation, I, as a viewer, can entirely sympathize with and even encourage her destructive behavior. Unlike the book and movie Gone Girl, which I know is an automatic comparison to the storyline that a lot of people would make, in my opinion, this series does a better job of establishing empathy with the so-called crazy wife right from the beginning. I follow Gemma's journey and entire thought process from the moment she discovers the hair that unravels her marriage. I am just as shocked to realize all her friends, who knew about the affair but kept it a secret from her, have been lying to her as she is. The use of cinematic effects and directing choices help me feel as though I'm inside her head even more. The shaky camera, the panning to different faces in a frenzy, the overlapping discordance of cheerful music playing in real life, and the tense soundtrack playing on repeat in her mind, the use of slow motion at times, flashes of memory, the dark shadows that flood into her spacious family home, suddenly making it eerie. I'm able to adopt her perspective, feel her grief, sense what it would be like to experience that level of betrayal, which I personally didn't get as much in the movie Gone Girl. With Gemma, I was so invested I felt she was avenging me as well, and felt some strange satisfaction watching her dismantle her husband's life over time. But that was conflicting, because I was also confronted with my empathy for him. The creators of Hannibal are also no strangers to including abstract, often expressionistic shots. They reflect the inner emotion and turmoil of the killer, the power and adrenaline and joy he feels. The teacup smashing into pieces and then magically putting itself back together in slow motion is a frame that stood out to me in particular. These are the images in Hannibal's mind when he kills, apparently. In Season 3, a character literally says the quote, "Extreme acts of cruelty require a high level of empathy." And in my opinion, this line is a thematic statement for the entire series storyline. It's basically suggesting that to have the capability of inflicting pain on another person, you need to empathize with them, put yourself in their shoes, understand what hurts yourself in order to achieve hurting someone else. In a scene where there is a perpetrator of violence in combination with a victim, a predator versus the prey, I am somehow able to feel empathy for both the murderer and the innocent person being murdered. Seeing as I'm able to empathize with all parties present, both TV shows do an amazing job of providing the optimal emotional experience possible for the viewer, since I'm able to feel twice the amount of pain from either side. Sometimes I'm not even sure who I want to win. Not that I'm a psychopath myself, but just because the show does a really good job of transporting me. I'm able to empathize with an antagonistic character like Hannibal, who I have virtually nothing in common with. My next reason for why the shows are great is because of the talent and calculating precision it takes to execute everything. What is it about watching an intelligent protagonist cleverly navigate and manipulate the world around them in ways I could only dream of? Both of them doctors, Hannibal Lecter, a psychiatrist, and Gemma Foster, a senior GP, they seem to demand respect and admiration from a societal standpoint based on their professions alone. However, I find that it's also the elegance, the grace, the effortlessness with which they commit what is basically pure violence. It's hard not to feel in awe watching Gemma smooth down her hair and sail out of the dinner party with a slight smile on her face immediately after being hit in the head by the 23-year-old girl, while the dinner guests are left screaming at each other, faded into the background. The same goes for Hannibal nonchalantly murdering and then cooking gourmet dishes that appear disturbingly appetizing, and then fine dining with unsuspecting FBI agents. I guess both shows make use of dinner party scenes. The viewer's satisfaction is then further augmented by the constant presence of dramatic irony. Dramatic irony, by the way, is a literary or theatrical technique where suspension is heightened because the audience knows something that the characters don't know. Gemma's husband doesn't know that she found out about a secret, and she knows better than to cause a scene straight away, since that would ruin her plan and gradual revenge. The show Hannibal catches the character at a time when he hasn't yet been caught by the police. So, in other words, this is before the Silence of the Lambs spiel where he's behind the bars at that point. And this means that Hannibal is able to just freely hang out with FBI agents, some of which are actually his therapy patients. He'll serve them meat from the victims of the cases they're investigating, comforts them about the trauma they endure after discovering the very bodies he arranged in such grotesque displays, and will even offer them advice or direction about how to solve them. He hangs out at his own crime scenes, pretending to critically analyze them, when really he's just admiring his own handiwork. Maybe I enjoy watching these shows because they're sick fantasies that I would obviously never dream of doing myself, but I get some weird release and, as I said, straight up satisfaction from watching them played out in a fictional setting where no one actually gets hurt. I guess another point I have, not that it's as important, but it's also significant. The screenwriting, it does make a difference. Hannibal has tons of philosophical one-liners thrown in there, like the example I referred to earlier. The characters in that show definitely aren't imitating how people would naturally talk, unless they're all meant to be hyper-intellectual and don't use any filler words. Instead, they're basically a vehicle for the screenwriter's universal implications and ideas to be communicated on screen. It's less so with Dr. Foster, but even then, they provide some thought-provoking outlooks on rather common everyday issues in the suburbs. Granted, there's admittedly a lot of bias in my selection of favorite TV shows. A lot of what makes art, yes, I'm calling this art, substantial to me is the context in which I discovered that TV show or that song, etc., what I was experiencing in life at the time emotionally, who it was recommended to me by, and in the case of Hannibal, it was introduced to me by a childhood friend, actually, so I guess consequently I will always kind of associate it with the formative and nostalgic friendship we shared. Maybe when I discovered both shows, I was at a point in my existence where I was seeking some sort of escape or distraction, and that's exactly what they were able to serve as. And so far, I haven't managed to find TV shows that do that as successfully as Dr. Foster and Hannibal have managed to. Thank you.